any organization filled with nothing but ambitious and opinionated members, groups with common interests are sure to form. Congress is no different. Of course, every lawmaker belongs to one of the core legislative bodies, the Senate or the House, and each of them is currently aligned with either the Republicans or the Democrats. But just beyond that is where it gets so much more complicated, as the members subdivide into all manner of smaller clusters. The way their institution works guarantees that each of the 100 senators is something of a power center on their own. In the 435-member House, who you are has much more to do with who you hang out with. The options include everything from the 50 state delegations, 1 out of every 8 members is from California, for example, to a couple of hundred caucuses representing all sorts of niche legislative interests. 7 House members from Kentucky, most of them, have formed the Bourbon Caucus to help the distilleries get what they want. Maybe the most important groups, however, are the major ideological teams formed in hopes of creating leverage for a political point of view. Almost 80% of the members of the House belong to at least one of these groups. For the Democrats, the biggest one is the Progressive Caucus, with 70 members, which promotes the priorities that have dominated the party for much of the last century, starting with a robust social safety net and the protection of civil rights. 20% belong to the New Democratic Coalition, which says it's all about economic growth to benefit the middle class. And only a relative handful are left in the Blue Dog Coalition, which stands for the most culturally and economically conservative democratic ideas. The ranks of the Blue Dogs have shrunk by more than half in the past decade, while the membership in the Progressives has gone up by 30%. Underscoring how House Democrats have moved so far to the left. Notice how little ideological overlap there is in these circles. There are just 3 members who belong to both the progressives and the pro-business centrists, for example. On the Republican side, there's a bit of a higher percentage of members with feet in both the moderate and hardline camps. The Republican Study Committee was created more than 40 years ago to promote cuts in domestic spending, boosts in defense spending, lower taxes, and the protection of so-called traditional values. But its membership has almost doubled in the past decade. 2 smaller planets represent the centrist groups. The Main Street Partnership has more of a pro-business vibe that calls for putting consensus and accomplishment ahead of ideological purity. It's got plenty of overlap with the Tuesday Group, which is socially moderate but fiscally conservative. As you can see, almost half of the members of these groups also align with the mainstream conservatives. But none of the moderates cross over with the newest and most recently newsworthy faction, the Freedom Caucus. A mixture of libertarians, isolationists, and small government conservatives, these members embody the most confrontational aspects of the Tea Party movement, and were the folks whose joy in calling out hell no to whatever the leadership wanted was what forced John Boehner out as the House Speaker last fall. But be on the lookout for more shape-shifting or solidifying in the months ahead.